Hello everybody and welcome to another Destiny build video. Today we have a pretty insane build here. This is going to combine the best elements of stasis with solar. So we're going to be able to scorch and slow and even freeze/shatter and ignite every enemy. As you can see, I have constant Hellion turrets, constant rifts being spawned. I also have Devour, and I'm even going to be able to have around 3 Bleak Watcher turrets up at a time, as well as a Hellion. So without further ado, let me show you how to make this build. So we're going to start off here with our stats just to get this out of the way as fast as possible. You're going to want to have as close to, if not exactly at, a 100 grenade and class stat. This is going to allow you to upkeep your Empowering Rift and upkeep your grenade, aka our Bleak Watchers, as much as possible. For the other 4 stats, it is really up to your choice. If you'd rather have a lot of melees, have that be your 3rd highest stat. If you'd rather have weapons be your highest one, make sure you do a lot of damage, you can go ahead and put that on as well, instead of melee or maybe super health. It's really up to you. The 2 essential ones, though, are grenade and class. Now, we're going to move over here to our exotic, which is going to be Solipsism. Now, I know a lot of people are not so happy when they see this exotic, but this one actually helps make an insane build, so we're going to check it out here. You're going to want Spirit of the Filaments and Spirit of Starfighter. With Filaments, it's going to allow us that when we cast that Empowering Rift, it will grant us Devour. If we defeat a target while Devour is active, it gives us class ability energy, and that's going to be 10% to be exact. We're also going to want Starfire on because this will allow grenades to recharge from empowered weapon damage, and with empowered weapon damage, those final blows will grant more energy. To be exact, we will get 10% on a kill thanks to Filaments for our Rift, and we will get 5% back to our grenade with every hit, and 15% back with every final blow while we're standing in an Empowering Rift. This is why they synergize so well, and that's why you're going to want these 2 together. Now, of course, you can always go and focus one at Ghost in the Pale Heart, and then roll some from Zur. Try to get some that way with your Strange Coins. That is a good way to get it if you have not gone to Solipsism with Filaments or Starfire. Now for our weapons, you can actually go ahead and use whatever you would like. As you can see, I have Tessellation on. This would be my #1 recommendation when it comes to an exotic, because Tessellation will give you about 20% grenade energy back on every single kill. So that's going to make Tessellation an amazing choice. It's going to allow us to upkeep Bleak Watchers much better than if we didn't have it. But if you don't want to use Tessellation, my second recommendation would be any weapon with Demolitionist. Demolitionist is going to make it so that we get a good chunk of grenade energy back on a kill. It should be somewhere around 10% on a primary ammo and 20% on a special ammo weapon. I could have the number slightly off, but it should be somewhere around there. If you don't want to use any of that, that's perfectly fine. You can just use, for example, like I threw on a Vulpecula, and it works perfectly fine because our Solipsism is going to be giving us our grenade energy back thanks to Spirit of Starfire. So you don't have to use a weapon with Demo or Tessellation itself, but that would just help a little bit. But of course, using anything is good enough for this build. Next, we're going to be checking out our subclass, which is Prismatic. So starting off here with our super, you can actually go ahead and put on whatever super you would like. Personally, my 3 recommendations would be Winter's Wrath, Needle Storm, or Nova Bomb. The reason why is because of Facet of Purpose, which is going to give us an elemental buff when we pick up an Orb of Power. We'll get into that just a little bit later, but that would mean that when you pick up an orb with Winter's Wrath on, you will get Frost Armor, Nova Bomb is Overshield, and Needle Storm is Woven Mail. Personally, I think those are the best 3 choices, so I would personally recommend sticking with one of those, but you can put on any super that you want. That is up to you. For your Rift, you're going to want a Empowering Rift. Empowering Rift is what's going to work with our Solipsism spirits, so that's why we're going to want this one over anything else. Go ahead and put on whatever jump you are most comfortable with. For our melee, you can actually go ahead and put on whatever you would like. Personally, my recommendations as well would actually be the same elements that the super was. Arcane Needle, Pocket Singularity, or Penumbral Blast. Penumbral Blast is a fun choice to add more freezes into your build. Arcane Needles is just incredibly good. And Pocket Singularity actually feels just so much nicer with the recent buffs to it, even getting a second charge now. So that's a pretty fun one. But of course you can put on Incinerator Snap if you want, or even Chain Lightning. That is entirely up to you. For your grenade, this is kind of the same idea as the last two. You can technically go ahead and put on whatever grenade you would like. It's not going to matter because Bleak Watcher, which is going to be our first aspect, is going to set a base cooldown on our grenades, so it doesn't really matter which grenade we use. Now, speaking of aspects, we're going to have our first one here, which is Bleak Watcher. This is the one that allows us to convert our grenade into a stasis turret that fires the slowing projectiles. So we're going to pair that though with our second aspect, which is Hellion. This is going to make so when we cast our class ability, we summon a solar turret that lobs flaming projectiles at distant targets. Those targets damaged by it are going to be scorched. So this is going to allow us to have dual turrets on the field at all times. Now, while most, if not all, prismatic builds would usually use Feed the Void to get Devour, thankfully we don't have to do that because of our Solipsism Spirit of the Filament, since that will be giving us our Devour. Now, of course, we're going to have our fragments. So we're going to start off with Facet of Protection. Pretty much the most essential fragment in any of the subclasses. Facet of Protection will obviously give us a nice chunk of damage resistance when we're surrounded by enemies. We're going to pair that with Facet of Purpose. So picking up an Orb of Power will grant us either Bolt Charge, Restoration, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Overshield, depending on the element of our super. That is why I recommend Winter's Wrath, is that way you get Frost Armor, which is my personal favorite, when you pick up an orb. You can also swap this for something like Needle Storm, so that way you get Woven Mail for a little while. Or you can even put on Void, aka Nova Bomb, if you would rather have an Overshield for a little while. So that one is up to you. Now we're going to pair that with Facet of Hope. Facet of Hope is nice because while we have an elemental buff, which we're going to have Devour, thanks to Spirit of Filaments, our class ability will regenerate more quickly. This is going to help us get our Empowering Rift back. And it's going to be very, very nice for this build. Now, last but not least is going to be Facet of Ruin. Facet of Ruin is going to increase the size and damage of the burst of Shatter and or Solar Ignitions. Since we're going to be freezing a ton of enemies thanks to Bleak Watcher, technically Winter's Wrath as well, and even Penumbral Blast if you choose to go with that, that is going to increase the damage of when we shatter those frozen targets. As for Hellion, this is going to be scorching enemies. So will Incinerator Snap if we choose to go with that. And that will obviously ignite enemies up to a certain point, and that will also cause our solar ignitions to be much better. Don't forget that exotic weapons are not an essential part of this build, meaning you can use a weapon with something such as Burning Ambition, Incandescent, things that spread Scorch themselves. You can also pair this with something like Tommy's Matchbook or Skyburner's Oath that will also scorch enemies on hits. So you can play into that solar or stasis fantasy a little more. Next, we're going to move over to our armor mods, and then afterwards we'll get to the artifact mods. So starting off here on our helmet is going to be a Harmonic Siphon. You're going to want to swap this to whatever element matches the weapons that you're using. So if you're using a Void weapon, go ahead and put on a Void Siphon instead. And for the next two slots, you can put on whatever you would like. You can throw on a Powerful Friends and maybe a Heavy Ammo Finder. You can throw on a Hands-On, maybe swap this one over to Power Preservation. Whatever you like, you can put on in these two slots. And then make sure you have a Siphon mod matching the main weapon that you're using. For the gauntlets, we're going to have a Impact Induction and a Focusing Strike. This is going to give us some class ability and grenade energy back when we cause a damage with our powered melee, no matter which one we choose. And we're going to have Heavy Handed on, so that way our powered melee final blows will create an Orb of Power. For the chest piece, go ahead and put on the resistance mods that match the activity you're doing. If you're doing an activity that has 50% increased void damage, slap on 2 of those and maybe a solar. Maybe you want 3 void ones at that rate. Or if you're doing an activity that has a pretty well-balanced damage type against you, then you can kind of slot one on for each one. So just put on the resistance mods that matches the activity that you're doing. For the boots, we're going to have a Better Already, Innervation, and Invigoration on. This is going to make it so when we pick up an orb, our health will immediately begin regenerating. This is going to help us get back some nice health. Then we're going to have Innervation on so that we get some grenade back when we pick up an orb. And we're going to pair that with Invigoration so that we reduce our melee cooldown when we pick up an orb as well. And then after that, we're going to have our Solipsism here. We're going to put on a Reaper so that when we put that rift down, our next weapon final blow guaranteed spawns an orb of power. We'll put on Powerful Attraction so that way we don't have to run after every orb we create. We can be relatively close and cast our rift and it will pick them up for us. And we're going to put on a Bomber so that when we use that class ability, aka our Empowering Rift, it will refund us some grenade energy back to help us get to our Bleak Watcher a little bit faster. And with that, we have to move over here to our artifact mods. So the artifact is not essential for this build, in the sense that this build will be perfectly fine without artifact mods. You could run 0 and it will be just fine. But of course, artifact mods are going to enhance the build even more. So the ones you're going to want on is going to start right here with One with Frost. One with Frost is going to make so that when Frost Armor is active, stasis weapons will gain increased reload speed and stability. This is one you want on if you are using Winter's Wrath, which is obviously going to give you Frost Armor when you pick up an orb thanks to Facet of Purpose. And instead, if you're running Needle Storm for Woven Mail, then you're going to want Tightly Woven on. This is going to make so that while Woven Mail is active, you will gain increased class ability and grenade stats, which is quite perfect for this build. And if you're using a strand weapon, then you're going to want Threadling Proliferation. This is going to obviously make it so that when we deal strand weapon damage, it has a chance to spawn some Threadlings. Defeating a strand debuff target will increase the chance. So if your weapon, your strand weapon of choice, is applying an elemental debuff, aka a strand debuff, it will increase that chance. If you're running a stasis or solar weapon, you're going to want Fever and Chill. This is going to make so that rapid precision hits with solar weapons will grant Radiant, and if you're using stasis weapons instead, it will grant you Frost Armor. This is also a great mod to ensure that we get Frost Armor more than just picking up an orb. You'll also want Frost Renewal on if you're using anything based around stasis, which gives you Frost Armor, whether that be Facet of Purpose or the Fever and Chill mod. This will make it so that when you have Frost Armor, when you reach critical damage, it will release a burst that freezes all nearby combatants and even gives you more Frost Armor. So this is a good one to have on, like I said, as long as you're using stuff that gives you Frost Armor. And then Refresh Threads is good no matter what you have on. Refresh Threads will make us when we pick up an elemental pickup matching our subclass element, it will grant us energy to our least charged ability. Now, while we're not intrinsically making elemental pickups, we can with Elemental Coalescence. So you're going to want to have this one on. This is going to allow us that when we defeat targets, we'll have a chance to create an elemental pickup matching our equipped super. That's going to be a stasis shard, assuming you are on, obviously, Winter's Wrath. And that will obviously be something else if you're using a different type of super. Regardless, it'll just be that you will be able to get some energy back when you pick them up thanks to Refresh Threads. Then in our last column here, we're going to use Radiant Shrapnel. Dealing sustained weapon damage or defeating a scorched combatant, which is going to be the key here since we will be scorching with Hellion or Incinerator Snap if you have that on. It will cause the target to release solar projectiles that will deal damage and scorch nearby enemies. So this is just another way to add more scorch to our build. Then after that, you're going to want to have on Frigid Glare. This is going to make it so that while Frost Armor is active, Stasis Precision Final Blows will cause combatants to release a freezing burst. So if you're using Winter's Wrath with Facet of Purpose, if you're running Fever and Chill and getting obviously Frost Armor thanks to that, then Frigid Glare is going to be a must. This is going to allow you to create more freezes and pair that even with Radiant Shrapnel, which is just defeating a Scorch combatant with a weapon, causes that scorching projectile. It's just a nice way of making this build even better. And with all of that, that is how you replicate the build. As you can see, it is absolutely insane. The amount of Bleak Watchers you can throw is just crazy. And your melees will actually even add a more important part than you think, because Warlock melees always apply elemental debuffs, from things like Jolt to Volatile to Unravel, Freeze even, and Scorch. Your melee is also very helpful. And as you can see, you also will put up 3 Bleak Watcher turrets at a time because it's just so fast at regeneration. You have Devour, you have everything that you could want. So with all of that being said though, that is the end of this video. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this build. Now I know having the exotic class item for Prismatic, aka for Warlock Solipsism, is not always the most amazing thing in the world because sometimes it can be annoying to try and get the roll. But this one is incredibly strong and I still wanted to show it off. So let me know yet again what you think in the comments below. And while you're down there, if you like the video, why not leave a like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good jazz, because it lets me know that you like to see these. With all of that though, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, I will see you around the tower.